The SWAT commander held up the hidden camera they'd pulled from my pool filtration system, its lens still dripping chlorinated water as he turned to Diane Sterling, our HOA president, with an expression of pure disgust. "Ma'am, this surveillance equipment has been recording your neighbor's 14-year-old daughter for 8 months, and according to our digital forensics, you've been selling the footage to private buyers." Diane's face went white as her elaborate fiction about my suspicious pool activities crumbled into federal charges for child exploitation and illegal surveillance. I watched from my front porch as federal agents continued extracting sophisticated recording equipment from locations I'd never suspected. Cameras hidden in landscape lighting, microphones embedded in fence posts, and data transmission devices disguised as utility connections. Each discovery revealed the scope of systematic surveillance that had been violating my family's privacy for months. What Diane Sterling didn't realize was that I'd spent 10 years as a cybersecurity expert specializing in surveillance detection, and the suspicious pool activities she'd reported were actually me systematically documenting the illegal spy network she'd built throughout our entire neighborhood. Now I know what you're thinking. Hidden cameras in swimming pools sounds like something from a horror movie, right? But this story gets absolutely terrifying. And what I discovered about my HOA president's surveillance operation will make you check every device in your home. If you've ever felt like someone was watching you a little too closely in your own neighborhood, share your experiences below, because after you hear what happened next, you'll understand that privacy invasion can hide behind the most trusted community positions. 8 months earlier, life felt promising for the first time since my divorce. Marcus Blackwell, cybersecurity consultant and full-time father, finally ready to give my daughter Emma the stable home she deserved in Cedar Pines Estates. The neighborhood's reputation for family safety and community values had convinced me this was the perfect place for a fresh start. Emma's competitive swimming career demanded serious training facilities, and our backyard's spacious layout provided ideal space for a regulation-length pool. $25,000 represented a significant investment, but watching my 14-year-old daughter's face light up when she saw the construction plans made every penny worthwhile. The pool installation should have been straightforward. Professional contractors, city permits, and HOA approval for a standard residential swimming facility. What I hadn't anticipated was Diane Sterling's immediate and intense interest in our construction project. Diane materialized at my fence line within hours of the excavation equipment arriving, clipboard in hand, and radiating authority that seemed disproportionate for a suburban community leader. Her approach was calculated, professional, like someone accustomed to managing complex operations under pressure rather than typical neighborhood volunteer work. "Mr. Blackwell," she announced, her voice carrying crisp precision. "This pool installation requires comprehensive safety assessment and community impact evaluation." I looked up from the construction timeline my contractor and I had been reviewing, immediately skeptical of her assertion. My research into Cedar Pines community guidelines had been thorough, conducted with the same methodical approach I used analyzing cybersecurity threats for corporate clients. "Diane, I've reviewed all applicable regulations. Pool installation doesn't require HOA approval beyond standard architectural compliance." Her smile remained fixed, but something calculating flickered behind her eyes. "Recent safety initiatives mandate enhanced oversight for any construction involving water systems and electrical infrastructure. Your project clearly requires comprehensive security evaluation." The phrasing triggered my professional paranoia. Diane wasn't just enforcing rules. She was manufacturing authority with language that suggested familiarity with surveillance and security protocols. But before I could challenge her claims further, she'd already retreated toward her house, speaking urgently into a phone with body language that indicated coordination with external authorities. That evening brought an official violation notice delivered by certified mail despite living 6 houses away. Unauthorized construction activity requiring immediate cessation pending federal safety review. $1,500 fine, escalating daily until compliance achieved, with references to community security protocols and child safety assessment procedures. I called the HOA office expecting bureaucratic discussion about alleged policy changes. The automated message explained that President Sterling was handling all community matters personally due to enhanced security coordination requirements. Her voicemail response was professional, oficial, and completely unhelpful. Professional instinct warned me this transcended normal neighborhood politics. 10 years analyzing cybersecurity threats for NSA contractors had taught me to recognize operational security measures, coordinated surveillance, and systematic information control. Diane's reaction suggested my pool construction threatened something far more significant than aesthetic concerns. That night, I conducted background research using skills developed during classified security investigations. Diane's profile contained gaps that raised immediate red flags: vague employment history and community development, financial resources exceeding typical civil service compensation, and residential patterns showing strategic relocations near family-oriented communities. More concerning was her arrival timeline in Cedar Pines Estates. She'd purchased her house 6 years ago, immediately after the previous HOA president had moved away unexpectedly. Property records showed she'd paid cash, 20% above market value, suggesting urgency rather than careful investment planning. My contractor returned the next morning with visible concern about the project's sudden complexity. 15 years of residential construction experience had taught him to recognize legitimate authority versus manufactured obstacles. And Diane's intervention felt deliberately obstructive rather than safety-focused. Marcus. That woman called my office 8 times yesterday, demanding detailed construction plans and threatening federal violations if we proceed without security clearance. She's talking about child safety concerns and surveillance protocols that don't match any building code I know. I handed him copies of my construction permits, city approvals, and safety assessments that demonstrated compliance with every legitimate requirement. We're following every established procedure. Someone's trying to manufacture problems where none exist, but Diane had prepared overnight. She arrived carrying professional folders containing documentation I'd never seen, security assessments, child safety reports, and community impact studies, claiming my pool construction required federal oversight due to enhanced surveillance protocols and community monitoring requirements. Her presentation was sophisticated, detailed, and completely fabricated. The documents looked official enough to fool casual inspection, but my cybersecurity background recognized subtle inconsistencies that suggested high-level forgery rather than legitimate government assessment. Mr. Blackwell, these security evaluations indicate your construction poses significant risks to community monitoring systems, she announced, spreading papers across my contractor's truck hood. Federal child safety protocols require comprehensive assessment before approving water facilities near residential surveillance networks. The language was revealing. Diane had inadvertently referenced community monitoring systems and residential surveillance networks as if such infrastructure was normal and expected. Her verbal slip suggested familiarity with surveillance operations that extended far beyond typical HOA authority. My contractor studied the documents with growing skepticism. Decades of construction work had familiarized him with legitimate safety assessments, and these reports contained technical language that didn't match standard building procedures. Ma'am, I've installed hundreds of residential pools. These security protocols describe surveillance infrastructure that doesn't exist in normal communities. His voice carried the quiet authority of someone who'd actually examined neighborhood electrical and communication systems. These reports seem to assume monitoring equipment that isn't part of standard residential development. Diane's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing something desperate and dangerous beneath her community leader facade. Mr. Miller, I'm sure your experience is valuable, but these assessments were conducted by federal security specialists using advanced monitoring detection equipment. The conversation continued for 50 minutes, with Diane producing increasingly sophisticated documentation supporting her claims. Each document appeared official enough to fool casual inspection, but my NSA contracting background recognized the subtle patterns that betrayed sophisticated intelligence community forgery. After she left, my contractor pulled me aside with obvious unease. Marcus, I've seen neighborhood disputes before, but this feels different. That woman's not just trying to stop your pool construction, she's terrified of what our excavation might discover or disrupt. His assessment aligned with my growing suspicions. Diane's desperation suggested my construction threatened something more significant than neighborhood aesthetics. But what could possibly be hidden in our suburban community that warranted such elaborate deception? The answer began revealing itself when I started noticing subtle anomalies throughout Cedar Pines Estates. landscape lighting that seemed unnecessarily sophisticated for decorative purposes, utility connections that didn't match standard residential service patterns, communication equipment disguised as standard cable and internet infrastructure. My cybersecurity training included surveillance detection, and the patterns I observed suggested systematic monitoring capabilities far beyond typical residential security systems. Someone had invested significant resources in creating comprehensive surveillance coverage throughout our neighborhood. Emma noticed my increased attention to our surroundings during our evening walks. My daughter's competitive swimming schedule meant she spent considerable time in our backyard, often practicing dryland training routines visible from multiple neighboring properties. "Dad, why do you keep looking at those light fixtures?" she asked, following my gaze toward decorative elements that seemed positioned for optimal viewing angles rather than effective illumination. "Just checking the electrical work, sweetheart, making sure everything's properly installed for safety." But privately, I was documenting systematic surveillance infrastructure that suggested our neighborhood was under comprehensive monitoring. The question was whether this represented legitimate security measures or something far more sinister. Glenn Cooper appeared at my fence line that weekend, carrying tools and wearing the nervous expression of someone preparing to share dangerous information. Glenn had lived in Cedar Pines since its original development, maintaining electrical systems and communication infrastructure that made him uniquely knowledgeable about neighborhood technical installations. "Marcus, we need to talk about what you're building back there," he whispered, glancing nervously toward Diane's house. "Your pool construction is going to intersect with systems that have been monitoring this neighborhood for 6 years. And there are people who'll do anything to keep that secret." His warning sent ice through my veins. Glenn's expression held the haunted quality of someone carrying dangerous knowledge, and his obvious fear transformed my understanding of the situation completely. "Glenn, what exactly do you know about monitoring systems?" He looked around carefully before responding, his voice barely audible. "I'm a retired electrical engineer. I installed what I thought was legitimate security equipment throughout this neighborhood under Diane's direction. I thought we were protecting families. But I recently discovered the real purpose of that surveillance network." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Glenn's professional background gave credibility to suspicions I'd been developing, and his involvement in installation meant he possessed technical knowledge about the complete surveillance infrastructure. "Glenn, I need you to tell me everything you know. If you're right about this, we're dealing with systematic privacy violations that go way beyond HOA authority." His story would transform my understanding of everything, revealing why Diane had been so desperate to prevent my pool construction and why she'd escalated to federal intervention when traditional intimidation tactics failed to stop our investigation. "The surveillance equipment I installed can monitor every outdoor activity in this neighborhood. Cameras, microfones, motion sensors, even electromagnetic signature detection. I thought we were creating a comprehensive security system to protect children and families." Glenn's description aligned with patterns I'd observed during NSA consulting work. Comprehensive surveillance networks required sophisticated technology and systematic installation that suggested professional intelligence gathering rather than typical residential security. "What kind of monitoring capabilities are we talking about?" "Everything. Video recording of all outdoor activities, audio monitoring of conversations in yards and patios, motion tracking that can identify individual residents by gait patterns." Glenn's voice carried the weight of someone who understood the implications. "The system can generate detailed behavioral profiles for every person living in Cedar Pines." The scope was staggering. Diane had apparently created a surveillance state within our suburban community, monitoring families and children with technology typically reserved for intelligence operations. My pool construction threatened to expose physical infrastructure that revealed the complete extent of systematic privacy violations. But Glenn's most disturbing revelation concerned the purpose of collected surveillance data. "Marcus, I discovered that monitoring footage isn't just stored locally. There's evidence of systematic transmission to external networks and commercial buyers. What I thought was community security is actually commercial exploitation of our neighbors and their children." The horror was immediate and overwhelming. Diane hadn't just violated our privacy. She'd been selling surveillance footage of our families and children to unknown buyers for commercial purposes. My 14-year-old daughter had been living under systematic surveillance designed to exploit her for profit. That night, I implemented advanced counter-surveillance measures around our property, while developing a comprehensive plan to expose Diane's operation and protect Emma from continued exploitation. My cybersecurity expertise would prove crucial for documenting the surveillance network and coordinating with legitimate law enforcement. As I watched Diane's house through my kitchen window, noting details that had previously seemed innocent, I realized the scope of systematic privacy violation that had been occurring under the guise of community leadership. The sophisticated communication equipment disguised as residential installations, the strategic positioning that provided optimal surveillance coverage, the coordination patterns that suggested commercial operation rather than legitimate security. Glenn was right. I wasn't dealing with an overzealous HOA president. I was facing a professional surveillance operator who'd spent years building one of the most comprehensive residential monitoring networks in American history. And my pool construction had accidentally threatened to expose everything she'd been hiding. The buried infrastructure represented systematic exploitation of our children and families, which meant Diane would do anything necessary to prevent exposure of her commercial surveillance operation. Her next move would determine whether this remained a privacy investigation or escalated to something far more dangerous. But what Diane didn't understand was that my NSA contracting background had prepared me for exactly this kind of systematic surveillance detection. While she'd been coordinating federal intervention, I'd been documenting everything, analyzing her operational patterns, and preparing for the kind of comprehensive counter-surveillance operation that would expose her crimes and protect our community's children. The war for Cedar Pines Estates was about to begin in earnest, and neither of us fully understood the international implications of what lay hidden beneath our suburban surveillance state. Glenn's hands shook as he unlocked a concealed safe in his garage, revealing 6 years of technical documentation that would destroy every assumption I'd made about our neighborhood's true purpose. The files contained installation blueprints, surveillance, équipement, spécifications, and communication logs that painted a horrifying picture of systematic child exploitation disguised as community security. Marcus, what I'm about to show you proves Diane isn't just violating privacy, Glenn whispered, spreading classified-looking documents across his workbench. She's running a commercial child exploitation network that generates over $3 million annually by selling surveillance footage of neighborhood children to international buyers. The financial scope hit me like a physical blow. Glenn's documentation revealed sophisticated equipment purchases, offshore banking arrangements, and customer lists that read like an international registry of predators and exploitation networks. Diane had transformed our family neighborhood into a commercial filming location for child voyeurism. Glenn, how long have you known about the commercial aspect? His weathered face aged another decade before my eyes. I discovered the truth 6 months ago when I found encrypted communication logs showing footage sales. What I thought was community security was actually systematic exploitation of our children for profit. Emma has been their primary revenue generator since you moved here. The horror was immediate and overwhelming. My daughter's swimming activities, backyard training sessions, and innocent childhood moments had been systematically recorded and sold to buyers who paid premium prices for surveillance footage of athletic teenage girls. Diane had been profiting from my child's exploitation while maintaining the facade of concerned community leadership. But Glenn's most devastating revelation concerned the scope of Diane's surveillance network. This operation extends beyond Cedar Pines. She's consulted for HOA installations in 12 other communities, creating a network of residential surveillance operations that monitor thousands of children nationwide. Detective Sarah Martinez arrived that afternoon with digital forensics equipment and federal backup that transformed our suburban investigation into a major cybercrime operation. The 911 reports about suspicious pool activities had triggered standard police response. But forensic analysis of surveillance equipment revealed federal crimes requiring specialized investigation. Mr. Blackwell, we've discovered surveillance technology worth over $2 million hidden throughout your neighborhood, Detective Martinez explained, reviewing Glenn's documentation with obvious shock. This equipment exceeds anything we've seen in residential communities. Someone has invested significant resources in creating comprehensive monitoring capabilities. My NSA background provided immediate credibility with law enforcement personnel. Detective Martinez understood I had clearance levels and technical expertise that made me a valuable witness rather than a potential suspect. Detective, I spent 10 years detecting surveillance threats for NSA contractors. This neighborhood has been transformed into a commercial exploitation facility targeting children. and our HOA president has been selling footage to international buyers. Agent David Chen arrived within hours. His FBI cybercrime credentials accompanied by federal warrants that elevated our investigation beyond local jurisdiction to international child exploitation prosecution. The evidence Glenn provided revealed systematic crimes spanning multiple states and countries. Mr. Blackwell, we've been tracking commercial child surveillance networks for 3 years. Agent Chen explained. Studying Glenn's technical documentation with professional recognition, the surveillance signatures we detected in this area match patterns associated with organized exploitation operations generating millions in revenue. The FBI's involvement transformed my understanding of Diane's true scope and criminal sophistication. This wasn't simple privacy violation. It was systematic child exploitation disguised as community security. Operated with intelligence-level technical capabilities and international commercial networks, Agent Chen's investigation revealed Diane's operation extended far beyond individual surveillance. She's connected to exploitation networks spanning 15 countries. The surveillance footage collected here is sold to buyers, including foreign pedophile rings, commercial voyeurism websites, and private collectors paying premium prices for specific content. The international implications were staggering. Diane had created a pipeline feeding American children's private moments to global exploitation markets, generating massive profits while maintaining the facade of suburban community leadership. Emma and dozens of other neighborhood children had been systematically exploited for years. But the investigation took an even darker turn when Judy Wells, a single mother from our neighborhood, approached federal agents with evidence that would expose the complete scope of Diane's criminal enterprise. Agent Chen, I need to show you something that will change your entire understanding of this case, Judy whispered, producing a hidden camera she'd discovered in her teenage daughter's bedroom. Diane has been blackmailing families who discovered surveillance equipment, threatening to destroy us if we reported her activities. Judy's evidence revealed systematic intimidation and control mechanisms that Diane used to maintain her exploitation network. Parents who discovered surveillance equipment faced fabricated criminal charges, financial ruin, and social destruction, unless they remained silent about the monitoring operations. She threatened to plant evidence that would make me look like an unfit mother. Judy continued, her voice shaking with years of suppressed fear. She said she had footage that could be edited to show whatever narrative she wanted, and that no one would believe me against the respected HOA president. The psychological warfare was brilliant and terrifying. Diane had used surveillance footage to create leverage against parents, ensuring their silence while continuing to exploit their children. Families became trapped in a system where reporting abuse meant risking everything they'd worked to build. Agent Chen's team discovered the complete technical infrastructure during systematic searches of Diane's properties. Hidden servers contained over 4 terabytes of surveillance footage organized by child age, activity type, and commercial value. The evidence revealed systematic exploitation spanning 6 years and affecting 127 children. This is the most sophisticated residential surveillance operation we've ever encountered, Agent Chen reported during federal briefings. Diane Sterling created a commercial child exploitation empire worth millions of dollars while maintaining perfect community leader credentials. The surveillance technology included military-grade equipment obtained through defense contractor connections, high-resolution cameras with night vision capabilities, sophisticated audio recording systems, motion analysis software, and encrypted transmission networks that enabled real-time monitoring from remote locations. But Diane's desperation peaked when she realized federal investigation couldn't be stopped through traditional intimidation or evidence destruction. Her final gambit involved escalating to community-wide crisis management designed to eliminate all witnesses and evidence. The emergency evacuation order arrived at 4:30 p.m. when Diane contacted federal agencies claiming to have discovered terrorist surveillance equipment throughout Cedar Pines estates. Her report described sophisticated monitoring devices targeting military families and defense contractors, requiring immediate community evacuation and federal intervention. This is Agent Chen. I heard through secure communications as additional tactical teams surrounded our neighborhood. We have confirmation that Diane Sterling has escalated to false terrorism, reporting to cover up her child exploitation network. All residents are now potential witnesses in federal criminal prosecution. The psychological manipulation was masterful and horrifying. Diane knew federal agents prioritized terrorism threats over exploitation investigations. creating perfect cover for destroying evidence while portraying herself as the heroic community leader who discovered dangerous surveillance equipment. Emma's reaction to evacuation orders broke my heart. My daughter understood enough about the situation to know she'd been systematically monitored, but the federal response terrified her more than the surveillance itself. "Dad, are we in danger? Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Some very bad people use technology to hurt children. But the police are stopping them now. We're safe. And the bad people are never going to hurt anyone again." But Diane's terrorism hoax backfired spectacularly when federal analysis revealed the surveillance equipment was designed for voyeurism rather than intelligence gathering. Digital forensics proved systematic child exploitation rather than terrorism. Triggering the largest residential surveillance prosecution in FBI history, Glenn's cooperation provided crucial technical testimony about installation procedures and equipment capabilities. His detailed knowledge enabled federal investigators to locate every hidden device and recover complete surveillance archives dating back 6 years. "She convinced me we were protecting children," Glenn testified during preliminary hearings. "I installed equipment in every home, thinking we were creating the safest neighborhood in America. I never imagined the monitoring was actually facilitating systematic exploitation of the children I thought I was protecting." The federal prosecution revealed international connections that transformed local investigation into global law enforcement operation. Diane's buyers included exploitation networks in 15 countries, generating revenue streams that funded expanded surveillance operations in multiple American communities. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," the federal prosecutor declared during opening statements, "Diane Sterling didn't just violate privacy. She created a commercial enterprise that systematically exploited American children, selling their most private moments to international predators while hiding behind community leadership authority." Diane's defense attempted to claim surveillance was legitimate security research authorized by undefined federal agencies. But investigators found no government connection or legitimate authority for her activities. Her operation was entirely criminal, motivated by profit rather than security. The trial lasted 8 weeks, with testimony from dozens of families describing years of systematic surveillance and exploitation. Expert witnesses explained the sophisticated technology and international commercial networks that enabled Diane's criminal enterprise. "Your Honor, the defendant created a surveillance state within an American suburb," Agent Chen testified. "She exploited parental trust and community authority to systematically victimize children for commercial profit. This represents one of the most sophisticated child exploitation operations in federal law enforcement history." The guilty verdicts came on all 89 federal charges: child exploitation, racketeering, conspiracy, Wehre Fraud, and terrorism hoax. Judge Patricia Martinez sentenced Diane to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, citing the scope of exploitation and ongoing danger to children. "Miss Sterling, you have betrayed the fundamental trust that communities place in leadership," Judge Martinez stated during sentencing. "You exploited parental love and concern to systematically victimize children for profit. This court sentences you to life imprisonment to ensure you can never again threaten the safety and privacy of American families." The victim compensation process involved comprehensive support for all affected families. Federal funds provided therapy, legal assistance, and technical security for homes throughout Cedar Pines. Professional teams removed all surveillance equipment and implemented privacy protection measures. Emma's recovery became a model for helping surveillance victims rebuild trust and confidence. Professional counseling, peer support groups, and privacy education helped her understand that the violation was not her fault and that proper authorities had restored her safety and security. My consulting practice evolved to specialize in residential surveillance detection and privacy protection. The techniques developed during the Cedar Pines investigation became standard procedures for protecting families from technological exploitation. Communities nationwide now implement surveillance awareness training based on our experience. Detective Martinez earned promotion to head the state's new privacy crimes unit, using lessons learned from Diane's case to investigate similar operations targeting residential communities. Her team has identified and dismantled 6 other surveillance networks, protecting hundreds of children from systematic exploitation. 2 years later, the Diane Sterling case continues, generating positive changes for family privacy protection. Congressional testimony led to the Cedar Pines Protection Act, federal legislation requiring disclosure and consent for all residential surveillance installations, and enhanced penalties for child exploitation through technology. Schools now teach surveillance awareness and privacy protection as part of digital citizenship education. Children learn to recognize surveillance equipment, understand their privacy rights, and report suspicious monitoring activities to appropriate authorities. Glenn Cooper became a national expert on surveillance detection, consulting for law enforcement agencies, investigating residential exploitation operations. His technical knowledge and guilt-driven advocacy help identify surveillance networks before children can be systematically exploited. The international cooperation triggered by Diane's prosecution has strengthened global efforts to combat commercial child exploitation. Enhanced information sharing between law enforcement agencies prevents exploitation networks from simply relocating when investigations begin in specific countries. Most importantly, the surveillance equipment analysis led to breakthrough detection technology that helps families identify hidden monitoring devices in their homes. Consumer-grade detection tools now enable parents to sweep their properties for surveillance equipment, protecting children from systematic exploitation. Cedar Pines Estates transformed into a model community for privacy protection and family security. Transparent governance, comprehensive privacy policies, and resident education ensure that surveillance can never again be disguised as community safety. The memorial garden honoring surveillance victims displays Emma's photograph alongside dozens of other children whose privacy was violated by Diane's exploitation network. The installation serves as a permanent reminder that technology must protect rather than exploit our most vulnerable community members. 3 years later, Diane remains in federal prison, serving her life sentence. Appeals have been consistently denied, and psychiatric evaluations show continued delusions about her protective intentions despite overwhelming evidence of systematic child exploitation. The pool that started this entire investigation was completed as a symbol of our family's recovery and resilience. Emma trains there daily, preparing for college swimming, while knowing that sophisticated security measures protect her privacy and safety from future surveillance threats. If you notice unusual security improvements or feel like someone's watching too closely in your neighborhood, trust your instincts and investigate. Document suspicious activities. Learn surveillance détection technique. And remember, protecting your family's privacy is your responsibility. But you don't have to do it alone. Share your experiences with suspicious surveillance in the comments. And let's build a community that protects children and families from those who would exploit our most private moments. Oh, and Diane, I know you're watching this from federal prison. Your surveillance network is completely dismantled. Our children's privacy is restored. And yes, Emma's new pool is absolutely beautiful and completely surveillance-free. Every time she swims in that clean water, we're reminded that sometimes the best protection against predators is just parents who refuse to let anyone violate their children's privacy.